James Seaton, the Ayrshire lad who escaped the slums of Glasgow to become a pioneer farmer at Portobello and represent Otago Peninsula in Parliament.
James Seaton's story captures many aspects that characterise the first phase of Scottish migration to Otago from 1847. He was born in 1822 in the beautiful Ayrshire countryside here at Katrine in the heart of Burns country. His father was a herdsman, but like so many country workmen, he joined the exodus out of the lowland counties in the 1830s as the rural workforce was cut dramatically. By 1832, the Seaton family was in Glasgow, living amidst the industrial squalor of the Gorbals. This riverside village had grown from a population of just 5,000 in 1800 to over 36,000 by 1846, and a new wave of poor Irish immigrants was already flooding into the area.
James and his father both worked in the giant cotton mills that dominated this area, as did a younger sister and brother.
The family lived here on Commercial Road, in one of the cheaply built tenement buildings that was already degenerating into the slums that would make the Gorbals a byword for deprivation and poverty.
James recalled in later life his involvement in the cotton workers' agitation against poor conditions and expensive food when he was just 16. He was also active in the religious controversies that led to the establishment of the Free Church in 1843 as a breakaway from the Scottish Presbyterian Church.
So he had both economic and religious reasons to show interest when a scheme to establish a free church colony in Otago was promoted around Glasgow in 1847. But he also had a more pressing motivation to escape the Gorbals: ill health. Family tradition has it that tuberculosis had already claimed the lives of his siblings, their bodies no doubt consigned to the Gorbals burial ground, now this rose garden at the end of the road. And when James was similarly afflicted, taking a long sea voyage to Otago seemed like a great option, and so it was to prove. Having married Marion Thompson in 1842, he now had two small daughters and had just lost another. After securing assisted passages, the Seatons now made their way to Greenock in November 1847 to join the first party of Free Church pilgrims heading to Otago on the Philip Lang.
James started his colonial life like most assisted immigrants, labouring on public works projects at minimum wage rates. He didn't remain there for long, however. Within months, he had taken a lease on land at Portobello and cleared a section of bush on the beachfront to make his family's first primitive cottage.
A market garden was planted behind it, specialising in potatoes and strawberries, and James then built himself a boat to take his produce to market in Port Chalmers and Dunedin. He was known to be handy at fixing equipment, he burnt shells to make lime for sale, and he worked further afield bushfelling. Now, such versatility was the hallmark of the successful pioneer.
As Marion produced a steady stream of children, there would eventually be 11 more Seatons born in Otago, and kept the home fires burning, James steadily built up their land holdings and expanded their agricultural output. By 1858, they were living in a new home on the High Road, the largest in Portobello, and their farm was thriving.
Despite his busy family and farming life, James had time and energy to devote to community affairs as well. To begin with, church and education matters were his prime concern, but he also took the lead in agitating for roads and cemeteries on the Otago Peninsula. And eventually this led him to seek election to the Otago Provincial Council, becoming the Peninsula representative on that body in 1867.
Though he was no great orator, James earned a reputation for hard work and faithfully representing his constituents in public office. He would later move on to represent Otago Peninsula in Parliament, working closely with fellow pioneer James McAndrew to push provincial concerns at the national level. In 1882, he even served as junior parliamentary whip for the opposition group. No mean achievement for a former cotton mill mechanic from the Gorbals.
In between these two parts of his political career, there was one role in Otago's public life in which James proved to be less successful. In late 1871, James Seaton was appointed to be Otago's immigrant recruiter in the west of Scotland.
He was one of two, the other being a former Dunedin mayor, Thomas Birch, whose target area was northern England and southern Scotland. Neither man was particularly suited to the role, their oratorical skills being modest at best, and considerable controversy followed news of their mission, which for some reason had been kept quiet until they were already in place in Britain.
The government's agent general in London didn't really want them, creating an awkward situation to say the least, since he was responsible for paying their expenses. Critics also alleged that it was an unnecessary jaunt the men were on, an excuse for them to have a free trip home on the public purse.
On the face of it, however, James Seaton ought to have been a poster boy for migration to Otago. Clearly, he had prospered enormously since his own arrival on the first ship, just like his old shipmate James Adam, who had been extremely successful as a migrant recruiter in the late 1850s. Instead, the controversy dogging his mission led to his early resignation and return to New Zealand. He just doesn't seem to have had the personality to front such a campaign. James did get to revisit his old haunts in Glasgow, and he was successful in recruiting some immigrants, notably from Orkney. But he was eventually replaced by the very same James Adam, who proved just as effective in promoting Otago as on his earlier stint as a recruiter. Nonetheless, James Seaton was a highly successful immigrant, and his slums to parliament trajectory does show just what was possible in pioneer Otago for someone prepared to work hard and seize every opportunity. James died in tragic circumstances. Returning to Portobello after a busy parliamentary term in November 1882, his supporters were arranging a banquet to honour him for his service. The weekend before, James made a trip by buggy into Dunedin, planning to buy a new horse and meet his parliamentary colleague, James McAndrew.
The new pony bolted as they passed the post office in Princes Street, but James managed to bring it under control, dodging various vehicles as they swerved up into Stafford Street and pulled up here at the Provincial Hotel where he was to meet McAndrew. Passers-by urged him not to risk any further progress with the new pony, but after learning that McAndrew had already gone, he set off for home.
As he turned into Hope Street, however, the pony bolted again, crashing into a lamppost, whereupon James was catapulted out of the buggy, smashing his skull on impact. The day planned for his banquet turned out to be the day of his funeral. James Seaton was just 60 years old. Today he is remembered as one of Otago Peninsula's true characters of the pioneering period.